thank you. Part of innovation is people think about entrepreneurs, and what I want to talk to you about today is how do you create change inside large organizations, which I have found is very difficult. So the really change, what I have found in all my research is that the world has plenty of good innovative ideas. What we don't have is, or what we really struggle with, is how to get those ideas adopted. So when you say to people, who do who thinks we should change? And everyone's like, yeah. And then you say, all right, no, who wants, are you ready to change? And everyone sort of shuts down. So I wanted to, before I get going, and so that I can tailor this for all of you, just ask you some questions. These are some typical challenges of changing at work. I'm afraid I might hurt my reputation. My boss is resistant to ideas. My ideas go against the culture, and I hate dealing with conflict and controversy. I would just wonder if there was one here that really resonated with you, which would it be?
I hate dealing with conflict.
Anyone?
Number 4.
Number 4. Yeah. Anyone else?
3.
3. Okay.
Number 5.
Yes. 4. Did I have another 4?
3 is like pretty.
3. 2. My boss is resistant. Okay. Yeah, these are really interesting. I hear these. I've been speaking all over the world in big companies, at universities, and government organizations. And these are the most popular reasons. Now, the other question I have is people say, there's one thing about me, but my organization. What does an organization resist? And of these 5 things, what would your, yes?
2 and 5?
2 and 5, not enough resources, and 5, we've tried that and it didn't work before. Yes. Anyone else?
Usually 2.
Usually 2. And this usually, I will tell you, is just an excuse.
Yeah.
It's just an excuse, and it's a reason not to do things, and it's really not valid. So what I'd like to share with you today, a little bit about how I got going in this little adventure into change, is I have always, in my work has been in marketing, and I've always been at the leading edge of introducing new things. And when you're introducing new things, you get all this resistance. And so finally, about 5 years ago, I had this epiphany of, why is it so hard to introduce new ideas within an organization as well as externally? And I went on this, I started doing research, I started interviewing people, I started writing about it. And these are some of the questions I came up with. So what I'd like to do in our brief time together is to tell you about 5 sort of qualities of people who are successful at creating change inside organizations, and the number 1 most important thing if you are a manager. Is anyone here a manager? Okay. So, and I'll talk about, that's a whole other presentation, but I want to talk about you as, I believe everybody can be a change agent regardless of whether you have positional authority. I think that we can no longer say, oh, my boss won't let me do that, or I don't have responsibility for that. The world is changing so quickly, and when we have good ideas, it's almost a responsibility for all of us to bring them forward. But it's really hard to do. So, first of all, my book, and I brought 2 books, so if anyone really identifies as a rebel, I'm happy to give this to you. But it's called Rebels at Work, and a lot of people don't like the word rebels, but it gets attention. I want to tell you my definition, the difference between what I would call a bad rebel or a troublemaker and a good rebel. So, we've all been at work where people, it's like whine, whine, whine. Why, they just complain. And what a positive rebel or change agent does is that they create solutions. They bring things forward. They're not focused on, oh, woe is me. They're looking at what's best for the organization. They don't obsess about problems, but they look at what are the possibilities? What could we do here? they are, a lot of people get, I think rebels are really reluctant because it's really hard. If you have a really good idea and you want to bring it forward, man, people are going to make it so hard for you. So those of us who are rebels, we become kind of reluctant, like, we got to do this, and it's really hard. The other thing, a really important thing, is that rebels there are no heroes, right? They're not doing it for glory. And when you're really creating change, one of the most important thing is to do it with other people. So any questions before I move on with that? Okay. This is just a quick slide, and this is the whole hero thing. If you really look at that whole hero's journey narrative, it's really hard, right? You know, the hero, starts off, meets with danger, has ordeals, almost gives up, resurrected, and they finally win. This is what change is like. This is what innovation is like. Innovation has become, it's become glamorous. And there's nothing glamorous about innovating inside large organizations. It's really hard. It's really rewarding as well. So, the 5 things. First of all, the people who are change makers have a really amazing ability to sense emerging trends. In a lot of ways, we are the canaries in the coal mine, where we see what's coming. Has anyone ever experienced that, where you sort of knew? Yeah. And what the challenge is, I think, is sometimes we see too far ahead, and people just don't even know what we're talking about. So the challenge is, how do we help people feel comfortable with it and bring them along slowly? And the other thing is, how do you get really risk-averse people to pay attention and not be complacent so you don't miss the boat? So it's a really interesting skill. The second thing I mentioned before, what change agents do, is they build alliances, and they do it together. There's really interesting research out of Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute. When you get 10% of the people in an organization, a community, a university to back an idea, it will tip. 9% won't happen. 10%, it clicks. So as you're creating change, who's your 10%? And you might work in an organization, there might be 100 people. Who are the 10 people? So we don't need to convince everybody. Who are the 10%, and it will click. The third thing is communicating like an activist. Really, really helpful. Most of my work has been in big Fortune 500 corporations. And, I gotta tell you, the communications is pretty boring. In order to get people to pay attention and to say, I'm gonna help you, let's do this, you have to get their hearts. You have to get their hearts. And what we get sort of trained to do and what we get used to doing is communicating with our heads. And logic to logic, people after a while, they're like, yeah. So how do we get people's hearts? How do we show them that what we're proposing connects with their values and the value of the organization? How do we say to people, here's how you can help. This is what an activist does. Here's how you can help. This is what you can do. And if you tell people what they can do, they're like, okay, I'll help you do that. So communicating, like an activist, and I have to tell you, it's not taught in business courses. And in the past, I've belonged to a lot of professional associations for communications, not taught there either. So the best thing we can do is learn from activists. In the beginning, I asked people what they felt like was the hardest thing, and it was, we run away from dealing with conflict and controversy. And there is never, ever, ever any change without conflict. Would you all agree with that? So if we back away from the elephant in the room, or we don't address what we all, to disagree with people, nothing is going to happen. So if we have nice, polite conversations, you know, it's very collaborative, no one gets upset in meetings, nothing is ever going to change. Yes?
No, this
It's my timing?
Yeah.
Thank you. I have 2 minutes. So anyway, this is a difficult skill to learn and to practice. Okay, thank you. But I would encourage you that if you can, you know, as you look at your own learning and professional development, this is one of the most important skills that we can all learn. The fifth thing is that what I have found in all my research are people who are remarkable at creating change stay positive and optimistic. I would say that optimism is the greatest act of rebellion. And the challenge with staying positive and optimistic is sometimes we lose sight of the signals that are telling us we should just quit this project. Sometimes we become obsessed, and you know, when we become obsessed, we really burn out. We really can hurt ourselves. So while I believe in optimism, we also have to be realists so we don't hurt ourselves. Okay, so for the leaders in the group or the managers in the group, people say, well, the biggest reason why people inside organizations don't stand up and suggest great new ideas is that it is not safe. And there's been a lot of academic research about this. Probably some of the best is out of NYU's Stern School. It is not safe for people to speak up, and so they don't. So the greatest thing as managers, and this is a whole other talk, is how do you make it safe? How do you make it safe for people? And most leaders that I've talked to, they're like, oh, I make it safe. And then you really dig into it, and they don't realize the small things that they're doing that makes it not so safe. So that's my talk. And I just, you know, this is a fascinating journey that I've been on. And I've spoken, you know, in big organizations. I was recently at the CIA. Everybody is looking at, like, how do we do this? How do we create more change? How do we make it easy for people to be heard and not to be frustrated? So I will open it up for questions. And sorry for talking so quickly. I am from Boston originally. Anyway? Yes?
Go ahead. Yeah, so if you're trying to, for example, convince a pharmaceutical company to invest in something that is off patent, but which could make them more money over the long term, a little thing like that, how would you suggest, would it be helpful to do your own economic forecasting and bring in that graph that shows that it's been done before, or?
Well, I mean, the first thing is, do they care? You know, do they care? And it's,
No, they don't.
then forget it.
Forget it.
Forget it. I mean, really, the only way to appeal to any organization is to connect with what they care about. And when you're looking, I almost think we have to be anthropologists. What are the, you know, what are the signals that show what an organization cares about? And if you can connect with that, but if they really don't care, forget it.
Well, in this case, I could show that it saves more patients' lives, which it does.
But do they? But my question with the pharmaceutical company is, they may say that on their mission statement, but is that what they really care about?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Just FYI, I did that project 6 years ago for a major pharmaceutical, so let's talk afterwards.
Yeah. It's challenging. It's challenging. And again, it's I would go with what emotionally are they worried about? So are they worried that they're going to lose a big market? You know, like what really go after, you know, you really tie, again, go with the emotional things as much, if not more, than the rational things. I mean, the reason why, you know, IBM almost lost it with the internet, because they were looking at rationally. Once they got really scared and fearful, that's when they decided to change. Yes?
What has been one of the most rewarding parts of helping leaders become change agents?
Well, actually, what's been really rewarding is not dealing with leaders. So what I specifically said, I said, there's so much out there for leaders, but no one is helping the individual person. And that's what's been rewarding, is for people to say, people who have said, I now am being heard and I'm making a difference at my work. That's rewarding. What's rewarding is that we can no longer wait for leaders or middle managers. And many middle managers are really scared. And they are so scared because things are changing so fast, they're clinging to what was. And it's really frustrating for a lot of people. So it's helping people manage their boss in a way that the boss allows new ideas to come forward. So, yes?
I just have a comment, and I'd just like to say I think your work is incredibly important, because that's the problem, like say with Europe, is a lot, and then there needs to be more in large corporations. There needs to be an entrepreneurial.
Yes.
It's really, I think it's critical.
Yes.
It's really important.
Yeah, and it's interesting in large organizations with technology is allowing that. There's something going on. Actually, it's in a large pharmaceutical company this week. I can't say what's going on, but there's a group of employees who are so upset about something that there are 300 of them who have banded together. They've sent a letter to the CEO saying, if this is what we're going to come out with, and we're letting you know as a courtesy if you want to reply to it. But on Wednesday, they are sending through the company intranet, you know, what they're upset about and recommending a solution, and 300 people have signed it. Yes?
You can't say because it's inside information,
Well,
or
yes,
is it already outside?
and it's I don't want to say what it is because it hasn't happened yet. But it's going to happen next week. Okay. And it's just employees saying, you know what? This is wrong. And no one's listening to us in management, so there's this intranet thing, so we're just gonna get out. And there are 300 of them. Again, the power in numbers. If there was one person who said, this is terrible, this is what we should be doing, no one would listen to her. 300 people from around the world saying, no, it's gonna be different.
I do have a question.
Yes.
I know you said that your work is based on internals of an organization, but I have a more general question. You talked about this 10% tipping point.
Yes.
Would that apply, you feel like, externally as well?
Absolutely, and it's great, and I can get you the link to the research. It applies externally too. So when I talked to, in my local town, we were fighting like a little bridge that was being taken down. And we knew we just need to get I live in a town of 30,000 people. We knew we needed to get 3,000 people. And we got what we wanted. Yes?
I was wondering, do the same principles apply to a smaller nonprofit where all the members are volunteers, but there's still a need to raise money?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I would say with nonprofits, often nonprofits, it's that communicate like an activist. And some nonprofits begin to lose that energy and that sense of purpose, or they have to make their purpose more relevant again.
Okay.
So sometimes the world is changing, so the people inside believe in that mission, but the people externally, not so relevant anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
One more question.
Yes.
You talked about communicating like an activist.
Yes.
Would you quickly just point out maybe some references that we could, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, has anyone seen the documentary? It's on HBO about Vito Russo. This is a great, if you get HBO, he was an AIDS activist. And it's a beautiful documentary and I think it's an example of communicating effectively, because he did it with people, and he kept saying, how am I going to get people's attention, right? So there was one thing in the documentary, and he was having this rally, and no one wanted to come, and he was talking about there's this disease that's happening and want health education, and people are like, hey, it's a holiday weekend, we're not paying attention. So what did he do? He invited Bette Midler, who they loved, because she was a singer at the Baths in New York, and very popular with the, the gay community. So he made it like a party. And everyone showed up, and they were entertained and informed. And this is what, so it's, and what an activist does is like, how do we get attention? How do we engage with people and do our other work? Yes.
That's a great suggestion. So I'm hearing get a celebrity for your cause.
Not necessarily.
But give me a source that I can go to where I can get a list of tips like that.
There's a whole chapter in this book.
Thank you.
So maybe I should give you this book. Yeah. There's a chapter on communicating in here, which is really important and just lays out step by step. I mean, so like if you're an activist, the big thing is what's at stake, right? What's at stake? Why should people care? That's the big thing. Then you've got to paint a picture of the future. If we're successful, this is what it would be like. And you've got to get there, feeling it. This is what it would feel like. And use pictures and, tell a story of the future. And the third thing is to show that it's possible. People follow people who they believe will be successful. If they don't believe you're going to be able to succeed in this, they're like, oh, there's another person with a big pipe dream, but it's too big, nothing's going to happen, I can't waste my time. They have to feel like that you've got a plan. They don't necessarily want to hear your whole plan, right? So that's the other thing with it, like an activist, they don't go into like, there's nothing worse than someone seeing like, all right, let me show you my 50-slide PowerPoint presentation how this is going to work. People go, oh, please, God, save me now. Not necessary. Okay. Thank you. Great questions.
So I'm going to ask a question as well. You're talking about activists, and in studying social movements, one of the things I found is that a lot of times framing or spin is really important.
Yes.
So if you're coming into it as a newbie, how do you pick up those skills and how do you create the message that has resonance and gets people excited?
I mean, I think it's a skill that needs to be learned. It's and there are plenty of people to learn from. And I think the mistake people make is thinking if they just state the problem, that it'll change, right? The other thing that people make the mistake of is not having enough credibility. So fundamental, and before you do anything in a change effort, is are you a credible person? Do you have the cred? Because people, if you don't have that credibility, no one's going to pay attention to you. There's a great thing in The Simpsons. Does anyone know The Simpsons, the cartoon show? And so Bart is saying, I'm going to wear a pink shirt to work today. And then he's like, oh, I can't wear a pink shirt to work because I haven't been there long enough, right? So once you have credibility, people will listen to you and you have more room to move. If you don't have credibility, sometimes that happens, you have the idea, you don't have the credibility, who do you need to bring? Who do you partner with? I mean, I've led change things over my career where I was like way, way, way over my head, but I saw a trend coming. So what I did was to get somebody who had the cred. And I didn't care if I was, I didn't care who got credit. I just wanted the change to happen. So I used that person because people would listen to that person.
Thank you so much. Do you have any other questions?
Great. And I have 2 books, so whoever feels like they...
One is mine.
One is yours, so I have one other, so whoever feels like they really need it. And you can get them on Amazon if otherwise.
Thank you so much.
You're
Let's
welcome.
give everyone from this panel a round of applause.
Thank you.